Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here, Bob Stewart over there. How you doing today, Bob Stewart?
I'm not going to lie. Right before we started, you said something, and it made me consider totally abandoning what our plan was and taking us in a totally different direction. Because what you said was, I'll follow your lead. And you've never said that to me before. And so I got excited, and I'm like, we do have something we were going to talk about, but Chad just said he'll follow my lead. So maybe we should talk about something else.
Well, Bob, you did bring this topic to us, so I'm following your lead just by working this topic.
I did. So I don't have anything else funner or better that I would like to change us
into.
Have
I ever said to you, when you do bring an episode, no, we're not going to do that one.
No.
Okay, I'm always following your lead when you're ready to step up. You just never
said it out loud. You just never said it out loud, okay, especially right before we're about to go do something where I can totally change the direction of where I'm leading us.
All right, Bob, I'm stalling long enough for you to change the direction before I start segueing us into today's topic. Anything you want to add before I jump into it?
No, this is maybe like an episode. What's that?
It's a good topic.
This is an episode for me because I think like my wife and I like have different upbringings and opinions. You're pointing at yourself, like same thing.
Yep.
And it's been a fascinating adventure over the last 10 years as we're, coming into the season of our lives where we are making good incomes. We don't have debt. We, have an opportunity to save it or invest it or find some balance between saving and investing it. And we both have, I think, like money soundtracks that play in our heads. And so I thought maybe we'll talk about kind of that psychology of saving versus investing and why, it's not necessarily math, Chad, that determines like what our net worth ends up being as much as it's mindset. Because think about this, and like,
great point.
I've got a number of individuals, like let's say I went to college with, that came out of college, right? They were making similar amounts of money to me. They paid similar taxes. They live here in Seattle, right? And 10 years later, 20 years later now, I bet if we were to look, and I don't know these guys' finances necessarily, but you see, you follow, you have them over as friends, and we could have all made the same amount of money, Chad, $150,000 a year or whatever it was for 10 years. And we look up 10 years later and some of us have $1 million net worths. Others of us have credit card debt. Some of us have gone through bankruptcies. Some of us are just barely subsiding, paycheck to paycheck, even though we're making what many of the rest of the people in our community would consider really decent incomes. And so it makes you realize like, it's not how much money you make that will end up determining what your net worth is. It's that mindset you have around money. And a lot of this is shaped from, when we were 7 years old, Chad.
Bob, none of it is about how much money you make, because I can show you somebody who's making minimum wage income that is still saving because they were taught X amount of money goes into saving and investing opportunity, not just saving, yet growth opportunity. And I can show you someone that I know personally making over $500,000 every year that is basically living paycheck to paycheck, right? They have no grasp of creating that future investment. They're just like, it'll all work out, or I'll just keep making it, or whatever is going to happen. Bob, I'm going to tease it now. I'm going to tease it a few times. Folks, if you haven't taken the Wealth series from Bob, Ben, and myself, go to winmakegive.com/wealth and go through the 16 sessions and get the workbooks and use them. And if the last time you did it was when we did it live, it's time for you to go back, unless you have monthly continued the activities that we taught you, because you'll be in a completely different place. Bob, we do know, and I just want to get this out up front before we go through some of these notes you sent over as I'm following your lead. We do know that opposites attract. Now, that doesn't mean, folks, tall's always going to end up with short, and blonde hair is always going to end up with dark hair. That's not what opposites attract in so many ways, because we are intrigued by the different. Well, what usually happens is one of them becomes the dominant. So, Bob, I'm going to take a guess that your wife's the saver, you're the investor.
Yeah.
Okay. My wife is the saver, all the money under the mattress, right? Having the security, having that safety, the short-term knowns. I know what's happening with my money right now. Bob and I would probably be more the investors. We're all about growth. We're all about risk. I'm willing to lose it all to take the opportunity to have those long-term successes if this hits type thing.
But they're long-term unknowns, Chad, versus like the short-term known that both of our wives are more comfortable with.
I know if I put $100 in, I'm getting 200 back, versus I know if I buy this stock now, I'm going to make, I hope, a lot of money on it down the road. Folks, first thing is you have to identify, are you the saver or are you the investor? Now, here's the thing, in my marriage, the saver has become the dominant one when it comes to finances. Because, and we've talked about this in other episodes, and we'll talk about it more, did not have a good foundation of finance. I did not have a good money background and upbringing. So even though I was in middle class coming up, I had a very different understanding of money than maybe you and Ben did, yet I still didn't have good lessons that came from it. My wife, on the other hand, she's always been really good with it, the security, the safety. She's become the dominant. I have to step back and in your house, is your wife the dominant? Is the saver the dominant? How does it work?
It's funny because when we met, I was admittedly, my identity was, I was horrible with money. I wasn't horrible at making it. I just spent it all. And so when we first met we were married a couple of years later, and for the first, let's call it, we've been married now 10 years. Let's call it the first 8 years of our marriage was definitely dominated by the saving mentality. Because when we got together, my wife's like, well, I've gotten to this point and I got this much. And I'm like, I've gotten to this point and I got shit because I spent it all. Right. And so coming into that relationship, we were like, well, we should probably take the philosophy of the one that actually has something today. And so we, very much became savers over time, over doing the net worth tracker, introducing her to the wealth series, over even after that, by the way, then we just knew where the money was. And we've had the 401ks. My wife has a 401k.
What made her relax a little, Bob?
What made her relax? I think
what made you more dominant that you were able to
what made her relax is that I started doing the things I proved to her and showed her that investing could be a safe, not safe, but because there's still some risk, but it wasn't the big scary monster that she thought it was, which is like, I don't even know, honestly, I don't think she knew what buying stocks even was or meant. I mean, sure, generally she's like, oh, you buy a stock, you own part of Apple. But I don't know, I don't think she knew a bunch about dividends. I don't think she knew, much on the history of the stock market. And I just, so for her, I think it was being able, and my wife and I, by the way, keep our finances separate and then share some things in finances. So that side of my finances that I kept separate, my identity changed. I became an investor. That was my mindset. And so, I'd have this Robinhood account and I've been building it up. And so over the last, call it 8 years, I've been doing this. About 2 years ago, we sat down one night and I was like, can I show you this? What I've been doing for the last, and I'd taken in this one Robinhood account, Chad, I'd taken really a $5,000 kind of seed. I don't know. You remember when we did the wealth series, Ben gave us all a little bonus, but he made us invest in stocks with it. Right. That $5,000 I've turned into $100,000 essentially. And
how much? Wait a minute.
Was it 5 or was it 1?
I don't know. I think I got $100 if I were lucky.
You didn't. Shut up. Anyway, he gave us a bonus at some point, but he said, it might've been 1,000. He said, you have to, and Look, I'm not, some stock market savant by any means. This has been one of the greatest runs in the history of the last 5 years.
Sure.
I bought a couple. NVIDIA was one, obviously. There's a few others, but I was able to show my wife, like, look what I've done, with some risk, yes. And so about 2 years ago, she was like, okay, I want to start. I'm gonna do this. And I've guided her for the last 2 years. She just took a chunk of her savings, right? And we put it in the stock market. We weekly, we look at it. We don't make trades. She always wants to sell anytime it's, that stock's down. And I'm like, honey, yeah, it's down, but you bought it here. It's down from like this imaginary peak number. So I don't know. She just educated herself. She'd become more open to it, but she needed to see something that was like a proven track record to be willing to do it.
Okay. And folks, that's a lesson we hope you'll get from today. Now, Bob, we're talking about now, let's go back in time.
Yeah.
Right. Let's go back because we both said it, that you said it earlier, right? I said it specifically, that a lot of it comes from our upbringing of what we've been raised. One of the things I think I saw in the notes you sent me for today, just so I could follow along, was that a lot of our beliefs about money are formed before we turn double digits in age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're very young when our money beliefs are being formed. Let's look back and kind of talk about some of those stories that are probably going in a lot of people's heads on one side or the other side of it. What was your story growing up about money?
I mean, I was raised, so I have a couple of like different stories. And I think in some ways, those different stories have kind of led it for me to be easier later in life to like change my own identity about money, because it wasn't the same story. So my parents, were married, and my parents were entrepreneurs when I was a young kid. They owned the local gas station / grocery store in the small little town of Ashford, Washington that I grew up in. And so early on, up until let's say the age of 8, I saw this very entrepreneurial experience. Some months, Chad, where business was going very well and we'd go to the Mariners games, and some months where business was tight in the wintertime. And it was like we were literally trading the inventory of the store for like meat from the guy in town that had the cows, And so there was this entrepreneurial, like I knew it existed, but I was young enough that I didn't necessarily realize the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship. And so that was one kind of segment of the story. Then my parents got divorced when I was 8, and it was a very messy divorce. And I was essentially raised by a single mom from 8 on. And my mother, bless her, went and got a very normal job, let's call it, right? And she was an assistant manager at Fred Meyer and would ultimately become a manager. And so and I can remember, it was 1988. I can remember my mom one time, like me wanting something and her sitting me down and saying and showing me like the budget of what she made $35,000 a year, broke it down. And, after she paid the rent and this and that, like she had $238 every month. Right. And this was what she bought our clothes with. And I remember her like breaking this all down for me. And I was probably 9 or 10. And it was like scary,
Right.
like as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, like, thoughts going through my head that I never was able to ask her or address with her. But it was things like, what if my mom lost her job? We would probably be out of this house because every month she only has $200 at the end of the month. Like in our rent, she showed me what the rent was. So in my head, I'm like calculating how long it would take her to save the rent. And, and she was showed me her checking account at some point that had $39 in it or whatever, Chad. So there was, on the one side, it was like, man, money's hard to make. I probably had a lot of stories of like, you gotta budget it and there's never a lot of extra. And even though my mom was very good with money, it's so hard to make. And so there was that. Then my mother took a really, really like good job. She joined a company, Chad, like early before it IPO'd. She ended up being a part of that IPO. And so when I was in high school, my mom was very well off. And that created like a different set. I learned about stocks, and I learned about like a IPO and what that meant. And so, by the way, I think the formative years of like that, like the stress that my mom wasn't trying to stress me out as a parent. I think she just wanted me to understand, smartly, by the way, that like we didn't have a bunch of money to go buy Jordans and Nikes and whatever. But those years, that middle set of years, I think are the money habits that I took out. Was paycheck to paycheck, money's stressful. You do want to live within your means. I was never a spend a bunch of money on credit cards person because that wasn't my mom. So I don't know, man. There's a lot of lessons in there, but it left me. I didn't know about investing. I didn't come out knowing, I didn't come into adulthood knowing about compound interest, the leverage of my money. It was a very conflicted upbringing, I guess. And so I think my money habits and behaviors were very chaotic. Although I do think it was easier for me to adjust them because I had a couple of different views of money and entrepreneurship and stuff as a young kid. And I know yours is, we've talked many times, Chad, about yours being a pretty traditional middle class upbringing, but sometimes those can come along with bad money habits. A lot of the middle class, I think in America anyway, and I know you were up in Canada, but it's credit cards, right? And it's a lot of credit card debt, and it's keeping up with the Joneses by buying the new Chevy pickup truck that I have a $700 payment on when I probably should have kept the last one that was only a $300 payment. So I think there's things in the middle class that even if you comfortably, like money was never like stressed your parents out and you didn't feel the stress of that, did you have money kind of, money concepts that stuck with you that weren't necessarily positive, even though it wasn't a stressor in your family's life?
Yes. And before I tell that, there was something you said about 2 minutes ago that I need to go back to.
Okay.
If we need to roll the tape, I can roll the tape. I want you to understand, and folks, I'm going to teach Bob Stewart something right here. Jordans are Nike.
Oh.
I just want you to understand that they're not separate shoes, Bob Stewart. I think you should know that as a shoe guy. All right. So,
well, hell, we could argue this right now, by the way.
Does Nike make Jordans?
Jordan is his own brand today.
Under Nike.
Brand. And if I went and grabbed a pair of my Jordans, some of them do have Nike on them, but many of them do not.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, the throwbacks they do today, it's very like if they come out with the Nike branding on them, it's like a big deal. And everybody's like, oh, they got the Nike Air branding on them, because most Jordans today don't. But I will concede you're mostly right.
Okay.
Most.
I'll tell you some of the quick story. I had two stories going on because I had my mother who was divorced from my father, and then they both remarried. So I lived with my mom and my dad. And the story to me there was always money. So I could ask for something and I almost always got it at some point. Maybe not immediately, like we're rich and here we're just going to spend the money. But things came through that way. My dad was an entrepreneur, so there were those lessons as well, as you mentioned. Yet there were times of the year, right? I always learned that, there's times where money's not good. There's times where money's good. There's times where money's not good. But what I saw was when money was good, we spent it. When, like you said, when money was also not as good, we just made do and said, you can't have those new shoes now, but give us 2-3 months, So I learned the roller coaster ride of money, not planning for the future. On the other side, my father, he was a CPA, him and his wife, and they were very good with money. The lessons I learned from them, though, credit card. Because anywhere we went, my father would look to her to see which credit card to put it on, because she knew which card cycle was where. So she knew, put it on that card because we now have 24 days still to pay that one off. So I always learned to play the credit card game was a good thing. And one of the negative lessons I learned about money was power. Because my father used money as a tool to control others in the family, to control me when I was going back to my mother's. It was like, no, the things I bought you don't get to go with you, right? Oh, you want money from me? Well, here's what you have to do for me to give it to you. You're going to have to earn these things. And to him, money was power. So I learned the negative beliefs of money was just control over other people. That was some of the lessons I learned. Credit cards were good and money was power.
Chad, what I would ask everybody to do right now, just write down a sentence that you remember hearing about money as a kid. Could be, we can't afford that. That was one I heard all the time. We can't afford that. It's probably why, not probably, I mean, one of the reasons that I have way more pairs of shoes than I ever needed in my life, I could outfit an army, is because I was constantly told we can't afford that. And the other kids in class had the shoes. And I can remember thinking to myself, Chad, I'm going to own all the shoes. Like that was a very common refrain in my brain when I was told we can't afford that. Is, well, one day I'm going to be able to afford it. And the reality is I spent my 20s spending money on shoes when I only have 2 feet, Chad. You've seen me before.
Not an investor, right? It was the mindset you had at the time. Bob, one thing they might write down is we can't afford that. From my side, I might write down something like, oh, just put it on the card, right? Because we'll get that. It always was being put on the credit card from my father, and I'm sure he paid off the bill. I don't know. I convinced him. I manipulated him when I was old enough to buy me a car. I bought it in Toronto. He lived in New York. I had him on the phone with the dealer because he was buying the car. He put it on the credit card. Right? And the dealer was like, you can't put a car on a credit card. And my father was like, watch me.
You know what's interesting? So my wife and I use a credit card for everything. We pay it off every month, right? But here's the thing: our kids see us using a credit card everywhere, and so we've absolutely. By the way, we have a conversation with them. Like they know that when we put the credit card down, it gets paid by money. Because I've had my kids say, "Well, just put it on the credit card," and I'm like, "No. Here's how this works.
It daily. Yeah. Like if I put something on the card right now while we're talking, I'll tell her about it as soon as I get off the podcast. She'll pay it off the credit card.
Same with
her. We might as well get the air miles, right?
And that's why we do it for the miles, right? Okay. We have an Alaska credit card. We fly over on Alaska. We only use Alaska, but we get a couple extra trips a year because everything goes on that credit card, but then we pay it off immediately. But my point being, we had to tell our kids because they could be that. I mean,
my father never told me that. I don't know if it was just going on the card and he was building up debt, or if he was paying it, when the cycle came due or whatever. I don't know. I just know they had 24 days until it came up because they would, put the gas on this one today because we're now at 26 days on that one till it's due. Does that mean they were just chasing it? I don't know. I'll never know. I only know what I heard as a kid, which was put it on the credit card, and have multiple. Don't just have one. Have multiple cards to keep putting it on the right one.
By the way, somebody out there is probably thinking to themselves, I don't have anything to write down because my parents didn't talk about money at all. And the reality of that then is the mindset you have is, I can't talk about my finances with anybody. Like I can't share. I don't want my neighbors to know. I don't want my family to know. Like that's a mindset too. Just, it wasn't talked about. It wasn't, put in your head because they were constantly saying we can't afford that. It was taboo. We didn't talk about it. Nobody asked dad. We weren't allowed to know how much dad made or how much the mortgage was or these different things.
All right, Bob. So let's take a few minutes and let's look at saving, the psychology of saving. And then let's take a few minutes and look at the psychology of investing, because that's what I know you really wanted this conversation to be about today. Yet we have to establish who we are. We just talked on another episode, assuming it's already dropped. We just talked on another episode about our identity, right? Are you a saver? Are you an investor? Do you want to change that and become one? Great activities and actions need to happen. But Bob, talk to me about the psychology of saving.
I mean, this is like, if it's safe, Chad.
Yep. There you go. You summed it right up.
It's responsible.
Ooh.
It's responsible. Like we're all, if you any rudimentary money class is generally going to be designed around this idea of you make a certain amount of money, spend less, and then the rest of the money you save. Now, you save for what purpose, right? Well, you could just stick it in the bank and get your 0.05 interest or whatever, the crappy interest rate you get when it's in a regular savings account today. But it's responsible. A lot of us are taught that that's a good good thing to do is to save it. It's also immediate.
Yes.
Like I can see that this month I had $1,000 in my savings account. You know, I at the end of the month had $300 left to save, and now my balance is $1,300, and I can just watch that thing. That's my wife. She loves to. She knows exactly what that number is all the time, and she just, you know, she can't wait to get the tax refund and stick it in that savings account so she can see her balance go up immediately.
Okay.
And the brain loves certainty.
A saver is safe, responsible. They see the immediate result of it happening right before their eyes.
Yep. The account balance is visible and predictable. You know, it's funny when the very first time, I can remember this like it was yesterday, I showed my wife Robinhood. The very first thing she said was, "Wait, you can see how much it's worth?" And I'm like, duh. Like, well, yes. And I think in her head, she didn't know how stocks work. You bought this piece of stock and you paid something for it, but you weren't sure how much it was worth. And how would you know? Because how do we know how much Costco's worth? And I was like, no, it's a whole market, and they trade stocks, and every day that stock has a price. And right here in Robinhood, I can see exactly how valuable that investment is today. So even a little thing for her, like her realizing, oh, it's visible, I can see it.
Yep.
You know, it kind of opened up that saver's brain, because I need that immediate recognition that I can see the balance change.
Yep. So here's some traps that we know savers get themselves into, Bob. One is, of course, well, I'll save or I'll invest when I have enough saved, right? And when's enough? That keeps you in the getting ready to get ready frame, right? I can't chance losing money, right? Because losing $100 is going to hurt more than the pleasure that comes from gaining $100. So I can't take the chance just in case it goes wrong. And then there's I'm just not good at this, which was your wife at that time, as you're saying. I just do what I know, which is it all goes in the savings account, because then I always know there's this much in the savings account, right? So that's the psychology that comes with saving, folks. If you're a saver, there's nothing wrong with being a saver. We're not here saying you can't be a saver. We just want you to understand, are you a saver? If you're not sure, are you hearing these things and figuring these things out? Bob, let's flip the coin. Give me some of the psychology of investing that would come along with it. What makes investing, good, bad? What's the psychology?
Well, I'm gonna compare it against like the saver mentality, right? Because generally what we're like, and I think our premise here, Chad, is we want you to become somebody that is comfortable with investing. Like, look, I think there's other personas here, by the way. I spend every single dollar I make, and right, like that's a persona. But let's say we get into this, okay, we are spending less than we earn.
Right. We become a saver. Now we should continue the journey into investor. If you're not at saver yet, folks, become a saver. Like we just talked about, go pay attention to the winmakegive.com/wealth to hear the wealth series. Yet don't stay as a saver, which is what Ben really pushed during that you're bringing up, which is go that next step. Once you're a saver, don't wait to become an investor.
Yeah, exactly. But here's why it feels scary when you have that saver mentality, right? It's uncertain. It's volatile sometimes. I had to recently tell my wife, do me and you a favor. Don't open Robinhood for the next week.
Right.
Like, because there was some, like, I just knew, right? There was some political turmoil going on. There was some tariff stuff happening. And like the stock market on one day had kind of taken a little, it was down that day. Yep. And then it was down the next day. And she was like she was down here like, have you seen this? And I'm like, just do yourself a favor. It's volatile, right? Just don't look at it for a week. By the way, when she looked back a week later, like she was able to gain her breath again, right? But it could be an emotional roller coaster. Like the market's up, and sometimes you feel like I'm the smartest guy in the room. This is our friend Drew, right? It's like,
you said his name,
right? Market's down. I'm an idiot, and I don't think Drew thinks of himself as an idiot when he makes a bad pick or something. But it's a roller coaster. it can be an emotional roller coaster. And so if I'm somebody that really likes the stability of knowing that savings account's just going to keep ticking up, that can be challenging. Here's the other thing. And this is, I mean, if you were to go on the internet, Chad, you'd think everybody out there was Warren Buffett and they were making stock picks. Like I've never seen, well, you'll see it from time to time, but none of my friends are out there like, yep, really, I bought a stinker this month and I'm down 18% on this piece of crap, right? It's always like, I got in on NVIDIA when it was at $70 or whatever. So that social shame and proof that you see out there will make you think you're the only one who has some volatility in the the stocks or the funds that you've picked out.
That's a great point, Bob. Everybody's talking about their wins. It's very rare to see people talking about their losses. And because of that, we're assuming we're the only person losing. So we're doing it wrong. So we're not going to become an investor. We're going to stay a saver because that's safe. I can just watch it climb in the account.
Yeah, look, if you're somebody that like, and this is what Erin and I had this conversation around when she took a pretty substantial amount of her savings. Let's call it 25% of her savings. My wife is a very high, earner. And so let's just call it $50,000. Doesn't matter what the number was, but I'm convincing this person, my wife, who's never invested before, who's always been a saver, to take a quarter of her savings. Let's call it 50 grand or whatever. And she's going to stick it into the stock market. We had to have we had a conversation about index funds and she did some of her own research, Chad, on index funds and what they meant. And so we did kind of a combination of, she picked a few companies that she is a big believer in, because I think that, some of the real hallmark companies in our industry or in our nation will, be good investments for the next 10 years, let's say. We did some index fund buying, but what was really hard initially was to make sure that she wasn't just making picks based on like what everybody was doing and what she was seeing.
Right.
I don't know, the buying with the herd or whatever, where it's like, oh, well, because when she got started, everybody's talking about NVIDIA this and NVIDIA that. And she's like, should I buy NVIDIA? And I'm like, look here, let's analyze it. Like, let's go look. And she didn't end up buying it, right? Because she was like, I don't know, but Costco is a company she loves and believes in. And so you got to be careful when you're doing this. Look, this is not an investment advice of what particularly you should go buy, but I'll tell you what to be careful of, right? The meme stocks, the crypto, the things where it's like, 200, 300, 500% returns. Like, you have to be, Chad, a little bit kind of realistic about this. But
Bob, the only stock advice I've ever heard someone give me that made a lot of sense was they said, buy Costco just before the holiday season because every realtor is going to buy every pie. So you're going to see Costco's value go up and then sell it off once the holiday's over because no one's buying it. Bob, I want to touch on some mindset shifts. That's what you wanted to bring. That's what you introduced at the beginning. Let's talk about a mindset shift or two that our audience should take on. And I'll throw a first one out there from what I heard from you saying, which was, I just save what's left, right? You said that at the beginning. Folks, I want you to take on the mindset that says, I save and invest first, right? Because, there was a book called Profit First that everybody
thinking of that.
Everyone got all excited about it. But, I'm going to pay myself first. Yet, Bob, did they really? Because they still are savers, probably. So they just saved, and whatever was left over, I would spend. Folks, Bob's a great example of this. I save and invest first, which means part of my expenses is money going into my investment account every single month, which means I pay Bob at 65 years of age before I start worrying about paying off other things that are going on right now. That is a mindset shift our audience should consider taking on, which is I pay my future self first by investing, not what's left over. Bob, give me another mindset.
Look, I'm bad with money. And Chad, I give you a little example earlier. I was bad with money, but I start making these small little steps. Instead of buying the Nikes, I'd buy one share of Nike stock. And during that time, again, I don't know that I necessarily knew this or this was the mind, but it's the mind. I'm no longer bad with money. I'm learning the skill of money. And there was a period where that's how I thought about it, right? I'm learning about money. I'm learning about money because it's not a personality trait. It's not like who I am is I'm bad with money. That would be a personality trait. It's a skill. And so I'm learning that skill. Like managing your money is a skill. And so, I essentially went from, I'm not good at this. I spend money. That's what I do. I make some, I spend it. At the end of the month, I go and I make some more and I spend some more to I'm practicing better money decisions. Like I had to purposely tell myself that this is what I'm doing. I'm practicing being better at money because I didn't go from I'm bad with money to I'm good with money. There was a whole bunch of practice that happened in the interim. And sometimes I still would buy the Nike shoes when I know I didn't need them. And I had 3 other pairs already in my closet in that same color and style,
Yep.
And I'd stumble and then I'd remind myself, I'm learning that money skill. Like, yeah, that was a bad decision, but I'm not bad with money. I'm just learning that skill.
Yeah. Here's another one, folks. I need to time it just right. Right. We all hear that I just missed it. Right. In video forget it. I missed it. I'm going to wait. Right. Folks, time in the market is more important than timing the market because 20 years from now, you're not going to look back and go, I got into the market too late by a week. Right. Or I missed that one. Over time, the stock market has shown, and that's not the only form of investment, right? Purchasing real estate, investing in other companies, whatever it is. We cover lots of different investment strategies in the Wealth series. Bob, time in the investment is always going to be timing the investment just right because you'll never know when it's just right. Give me another mindset shift as we bring this one.
That I have to do this on my own. I think there's help to be had. The Wealth series is a great example, Chad. But even simple things like, look, I spent a number of years where I was a damn fool not putting like the percentage into my retirement accounts that I should have been putting all through my 20s, Chad. Like I was just like, I'm making lots of money. I'll make lots of money for the rest of my life.
Yep.
And there were times during that, by the way, where I was giving away free money because like Market Leader back in the day, they used to match our 401ks up to X percent. And I never fully, filled those up. And so you're not alone in this. Like, and by the way, you don't have to be an expert stock picker. You learn about things like index funds, and then you just go put your money in an index fund, and it tracks the entire stock market, which is essentially tracking the entire U.S. financial system. So it's okay. Like, ask for help. Reach out to us. We'll probably point you to the Wealth series and make sure you start there. Right. But there's no shame if your family never talked about money and you weren't allowed to talk about it with people. There's no shame in it.
Folks, Bob just mentioned it. The Wealth series. winmakegive.com/wealth. Go back, listen to it, then come back and listen to this episode yet again. You got to do the work, though. It's not going to magically happen. You've got to pull out the forms, the worksheets, the stuff we give you in the Wealth series. That's going to help you. Today, we want you to identify where are you on that spender, saver, investor spectrum, right? If you put it on a 0 to 10 scale with 0 is a spender, maybe 5's a saver and 10's an investor, where are you on that? And what can you do to move 1 or 2 points closer to a 10 so that you can live life as an investor with the opportunities that come? And it's going to start with you identifying some of the stories you believe about money. Take the steps. Bob, last thought, last word on the mindset of money you wanted to talk about today?
Chad, I think you and I are both really good examples. Like nobody's coming to save you on this stuff. The habits that you are currently deploying will be passed down to your children. And if you want to change this for generations to come, like in some ways it's incumbent upon you, Chad, or me, Chad, or the person listening to this to do it. And you can do it. You just have to decide that you want to. You have to change that identity that you have around money. And take some small actions today to start to paint the identity that you believe, Chad, is one that will serve you well and your kids and their kids well, because these things get passed down over generations until somebody changes it.
Folks, if you're listening to this episode, that means you have invested in yourself with your development and growth. Now take some of the lessons and invest in yourself financially as well. Until our next episode, as always, do good.